Good morning. This is episode 13, Richard Thomas Writing Channel, Krapp's Next Tapes, the Satisfaction, Dissatisfaction Paradox, and me and U.S. Grant. I woke up this morning thinking of Samuel Beckett's one-act play, Krapp's Last Tape. And I took a look at it. I've seen this play twice in my life. I took it very seriously, thought about it a lot, thought I understood it. Now I'm old and wise enough to know that I don't have a fucking clue. But I watched it sort of. I mean, I skipped a little bit because it's like 47 minutes long, and I watched a version on YouTube. And Krapp's Last Tape is basically what is described as an old man. He's 69 years old. That's my age. It's funny, I never think of myself as an old man. I think of myself as a fat man, but I don't think of myself as an old man. And this 69-year-old man, this 69-year-old old man comes out. There's a whole bit of business. He eating a banana and slipping on the banana peel. There's all stuff like that. Beckett used comedy, like vaudeville, silent movie, not vaudeville, silent movie comedy shtick for some existential reason. Theater of the absurd, right? So he's got these tapes, and he's in darkness pretty much, except for a spotlight on him at his desk. Every once in a while he gets up and he gets some props or something. But it's absurd. It's absurd. It's an absurd presentation. This guy's making tapes and he's basically talking to himself, it seems. And this is close to talking to myself. I mean, I'm putting a lot of effort in this. I don't, some people listen, and thank you for your patronage. But it's so why do it? He goes through his memories, which is something that I do and have done. And then there's other I'm way oversimplifying this thing. But then he makes a tape, his last tape, and it's kind of I don't know what. In the tape that he listens to, he's 39 years old, and he says he has no regret. Now, I say I don't have any regret all the time at 69, and I mean it. But he seems filled with regret when he talks about his life or lack thereof in his last tape. And it seems like it's meaningless. Life is meaningless. And, we're stuck here just talking to ourselves in a void. And I mean, I'm sure there's more to it than that. There's got to be more to it than that. I don't think they'd give a Nobel Prize to a guy that's all he was saying, even if it was kind of like a new idea. That's not the way I look at life. I think life is my opportunity to make meaning. I don't think life has any meaning. I guess I agree with Beckett on that score. Life in and of itself has no meaning. We create it. We create the meaning. So these are Krapp's next tapes. The 69-year-old man who doesn't think he's old, sitting by himself, talking into a microphone, not entirely sure if it's being heard or not. I kind of like that. I like that idea. Then I saw a little bit of a video of some guy doing, I guess, something not quite similar to what I'm doing, because I think he was more or less like I don't know if he was a professor or he was an amateur literary critic or whatever. And he was mentioning that the novelist Cormac McCarthy didn't like Beckett's work, not Beckett personally. And then he said that maybe a lot of that had to do with Cormac McCarthy wanted to do screenplays and plays. He did some of them. And it was in the 1960s when he was coming up. And this whole thing about Cormac McCarthy wrote these great novels that Blood Meridian, he made like $3,000 on it or something. It's like the, you know, and maybe that, so he said, this guy made it sound like Cormac McCarthy was competitive with Beckett. But I think maybe Cormac McCarthy maybe he felt he had meaning in his life. And by the way, I wonder about Beckett too. I don't think necessarily that's what Beckett was saying because he made a pretty nice life for himself with these absurdist plays. I mean, he won the fucking Nobel Prize. I mean, um, so and I also as the 69-year-old, not old, old man, old, not old. I don't know. In the 60s and 70s, Beckett was a big deal that was, considered with, well, you hear about Joyce and Beckett, the great Irish writers of the last century. I mean, really, like I have no idea if that's still a thing anymore. I mean, I'm sure it's a thing with people who specialize in that or have a particular interest in it. Maybe everything is just a thing now where people have a particular interest in it. But at the time that I was exposed, lightly exposed, it's not, I took no deep dives into Beckett, obviously, from my comments here. At the time I was exposed to Beckett, I mean, he was pretty much just regarded as a big deal. I mean, you didn't hear with people, with a bigger subset, people who went to plays, people who read books. You didn't hear people say, "Oh, that Beckett, he sucks." That didn't happen. And I don't think he sucks exactly. Not at all. Not at all. I had the I had the same experience watching Perfect Days, that movie, which has become one of my favorite movies. And I don't know, is this a function of being old, or maybe a function of being fat? I don't know which one. I had to fight to stay interested, and it was really worth it because that's a great, great film. But I was looking at this Krapp's last tape, and part of it might be part of the old part is, you look at it and you say, "Yeah, I get it. I get it. It's absurd. It's a void. The guy the guy had a pleasant experience that he's clinging to for the idea that he had a life, but he really hasn't had a life, and now he's old and he's going to die, and he's just talking to himself, and his life was nothing but him doing a monologue, not internal, external, because he said it out loud, but that nobody heard and nobody gave a damn. And I don't think that Beckett was so shallow to be talking about fame. I think he was talking about connection. So this guy was completely alienated from, and Beckett was saying that that's basically all of us, that we're all alone. You're born alone. You die alone. Even when you're with people that you love, you're there alone. There's the world and there's you, and you have an experience of the world. I believe all that. The only thing I don't believe is that the idea that that's all it is. And maybe Beckett was saying, no, it's not all it is. Maybe he was saying, I took this, I took this kind of despair, and I turned it into meaning. I turned it into something poetic. And, you know, so maybe this isn't, if that's true, then maybe what I'm doing is in the tradition of Krapp's last tapes. As long as I'm being philosophical, I talk, therefore I am. It's all I ever really wanted to do is talk. I mean, even the writing is talk. So there's there's meaning in that. Okay, Krapp's last tape. The other one, the next thing, not the other one because there's three of them today. The next thing is what was it? The satisfaction dissatisfaction paradox. As I go through this process of reading through what I've been writing for the last 11 years, but in this case so far, really for the year that we've been in Nashville. Uh, on the one hand, I have extreme satisfaction. I love all of it, and that's usually my initial reaction when I create a piece or and peace is a good it's a good way to talk about it because it's part of a whole. But whenever I do some creation, I generally have a feeling that I like it. I mean, when I look at this tape, when I look at this tape later, I I think I know actually. I'm going to watch this tape and I'm going to think, oh, that's pretty good. When I've been reading through this stuff, I said, oh, that's pretty good. Even if it's bad, it's good. And that is the dissatisfaction part of it. I mean, with my experience of life is that I do something uh, with great enthusiasm, and it's the meaning. I always have an illusion that it's the meaning of my life, but actually, the doing of it is part of the process of the meaning of my life. So, for example, I'll just take something a lot more basic, more prosaic, to kind of use that word ironically, than the writing that the writing that I'm reading is as I go through these tapes. And I mean, I became an attorney, and that was a better when I was 50 years old, and that was a better state of being than when I wasn't an attorney. And then I got my first job, and it was at an insurance coverage firm, and I refused to, screw widows and orphans out of their wrongful death money. So I left that job. But it was better to not only have a law license, but to actually start interacting and working with the law. And then I went to work in an ethics council, the Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission in Illinois. And I was an ethics litigator. And that was good. I did trials. So now I was doing a more developed, more interesting to me and developed part of being a lawyer. And I felt like I was serving my values. But as I worked there, I started to question what was going on, and it wasn't serving my values anymore. So I became a teacher, and that was better because being a lawyer was arguing, and I didn't want to argue. I wanted to find out the truth. In an advocacy system, you participate in a process of finding the truth, but you're not actually finding the truth. You're just one cog in a machine. I wanted to find the truth for myself. And I became a teacher. And when I was teaching, I began performing again and writing and performing again. And that was good because it was a form of, but then the limitations of performing, the audience was a drag, the people I was with were a drag. And I, so, so actually, when the teaching stopped and the performing stopped, then there was a great leap into the writing. So the writing that I'd been doing for several years already took a leap forward. And then I did that for a long time, and that really satisfied me for a long time. And then this year, after our first this year, the year starting in August of 2023, um, I started to be dissatisfied with that writing. And then I wrote a couple of manuscripts, and I thought I was going to they were going to be novels, and I submitted them to publishers, and I didn't like that process. And then that led into this. In other words, I'm satisfied every step of the way, um, but I'm also dissatisfied, and it always changes into something else. So I can I can look at something and like it for that time. I kind of intuitively knew this because when I was writing the blog, I dated everything. I always put a date on it because I figured this is who I am on this day. But then it changes. And I think at the end of the day, that is really what life is to me. The meaning of life is learning to become more fully yourself, um, to create something more fully representative of yourself. And ultimately, the ultimate creation is yourself. So that's one of the things that I like about these videos. It's like, and I've mentioned this before, I'm here. So you get to see me, you get to see the face, you hear the voice, you see that part of just a little glimpse of the domicile. You you see me, and and that's all. And if you don't see me, I see me by doing this. So that's the satisfaction, dissatisfaction. I love everything that I've ever done. Uh, Everything that I've ever done was deficient from deficient's not the word. Every how I have been, everything is a foundation for the next thing. And some that might sound like, oh, well, you're talking about progress. Well, progress sometimes, but I mean, who's to say? I'm really talking about change. Uh, okay. Now the next thing, me and Grant. This is interesting because and before and I've decided. I know I was saying, am I going to keep with the personal essays that were on the blog back in August and September of 2023, or was I going to jump to the improv story manuscript? I'm going to stick with the blog right now because that seems to fit. Because this me and Grant. So what I did was is I took Ron Chernow's biography of Ulysses S. Grant, and I read it kind of as a meditation on myself and on Grant. So that's what I want to start going through. Before I start, I hope I'm not like blowing the lead of what I'm going to say. There are two things that I sense, but when I read it, I might find out that it's not exactly the space that I was in. But I think something that's changed in the last year since I read these pieces, there's two things that have changed. One, I was identifying with Grant because Grant took a lot of shit during his life, and he was down and out, and he engaged in a lot of ridicule, and he was considered a failure. Um, but he rose above it, and then in my book he became an artist in the arts of war, and then he wrote a great autobiography. So He was a great general and a great writer. And I think Grant was also limited because he was not a man, and I identified with this too. He was not a man that was skilled in what was considered important in America at that time and now. He wasn't a businessman. He had no sense of business at all. What he had brilliantly was a creative temperament and a sense of justice. And I think even more than Abraham Lincoln, he really he really I mean, he had to go through some evolution, but he really grew to despise slavery and despise that anyone would be insulted and condescended to that way and in that way and be abused. So he he was there. Of course, there were abolitionists and there were others that felt the same way. It's not that there weren't a lot of people that didn't have that attitude. Uh, but I mean, it still pisses me off that you don't hear one thing about being in Tennessee. You don't hear the apologies. You know, they thought they could own people. They wanted to own people. And they'd rape them and beat them and kill them and split up their families and just like treat them worse than farm animals. And nobody. Actually, a lot of people. There's a lot of Southerners that are very enlightened and beyond that. Some of them have been in national politics, and you know, and certainly a lot of writers and everything else. They have a tremendous literary tradition. So I'm not pasting the entire region with one brush. But there is this strain down here. It's like in Florida when they say, well, when they teach slavery, they say, well, it wasn't all bad. It was a good jobs training program. I mean, are they fucking for real? I mean, so you deal or when you see some of these people in Mississippi that are just like they're so into the tradition of the Confederacy and the fucking statues and the Confederate flag and their attitude, you know, they're they're destroying people. They're backs covered with scars, young girls being just grabbed and raped in a rough way and then thrown aside, the putting people in chains on auction blocks and these horrible things, and they're trying to reduce it to like mint juleps and banjo music. I mean, it's really disgusting. And I think that kind of ignorance is a matter of character. It's not a matter of intelligence. They don't know because they don't want to know. There's a and then it bleeds into other things. For example, there was one of these horrible school shootings in Georgia recently. 14-year-old boy. His mother called the school and said there was a problem. Whoever took the call in the administrator's office at the school went to the boy's homeroom. There was another child, another student in the homeroom that had a similar name. The person from the office confused the names. They took that child out into the hallway and took his backpack. And the kid started shooting. Now, that's really fucking stupid. That's really, really stupid. You could say, I make mistakes like that all the time. You know when I don't make a mistake like that? When it's something really important. when it's something where you make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's. I mean, you know, I hope I think there were a couple of kids and and a couple of teachers that got killed. I hope that there are wrongful death uh, lawsuits against that school and school district, and I hope those people get a lot of money because that's what's just. And you know, to me, and I'm not going to go into the details of it right now. It'll come out. I think with this election that's going on right now in the polls, it's just about even. This is this is September 9th, 2024 when I'm making this tape. It's a day before the presidential debate. I don't know how fucking stupid a person is that looks at those two people and they choose Trump. I don't know the mentality of a person that would vote for that man. And that's really a hard thing for me to get past. You know, they vote for him because they want to. If you ever talk to one of them, I mean, God bless him, as President Obama at the Democratic convention said, don't be judgmental with these people. Talk to them, you know, understand them, see where they're coming from, stand your ground, but let them know that to me is very, very hard to do. It's very hard to do. It, it's so fucking stupid. Look at the guy. I'm as you can tell if you've been listening to me, I'm very liberal and progressive politically, but I guess there's some conservative in me because I liked how Liz Cheney uh, spoke. And she described, and this was just one part of how awful Trump and Vance are. She described them as misogynistic pigs. I think that's a good piece of writing. Okay, let's start with this grant writing. Not that I'm not submitting a grant, but this is, and let's see where we are on this. All right, 9/18/23. Writing Thomas by Thomas while reading Grant by Chernow. Introduction. So I was reading the introduction of the book, and I was writing. I don't like this first paragraph at all. I dedicate this book to my readers who must give a shit about me personally to take the trouble to listen to all this, and who probably give a shit about themselves while writing them by them while reading me by me. Look, I appreciate anybody who's listening to me. But even up to a year ago, I was always concerned with friendship. I wanted to have more friends. I thought I should be more present in the world. I wanted to connect with more people. Uh, now, Now, am I going to contradict myself? Because that was stupid on my part, but I grew past it. But I work on it. Not people are looking at Trump for 9 years and they go, oh, I'll vote for him. How stupid are you? But anyway, but this was dumb. This was dumb on my part. I mean, I appreciate every friend that I have, and I appreciate everyone who listens or reads me. I truly do. I appreciate the people in my life, but there's something cloying in this paragraph about like the need for friends, or I think that's connected to the rejection of the whole idea of submitting to publishers or whatever. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to do my work, and who it's meant for, and that's it. I don't think that's a valuable concern. It's a different concern than, oh, I want to be famous, or I want to be rich, or I want to be popular, or any of that. I want to be published. It's different from those superficial concerns, but it's still kind of ultimately it's a superficial concern. You have the friends that are intended for you. Just live your life and whatever. Uh, okay. These are short paragraphs. Humanity's cosmic paradox. We are most exalted in our own ordinariness. Poetry sees God and more than God in the routine, mundane, and prosaic stuff of our existence. The great personages of history are our reflections. We get a haircut and make $1, and when circumstances permit, have opportunities to free the slaves. Yeah, that's all right. I'll I'll go with that. I especially like the part of it that says that, yeah, I can look at Grant the way I can look at a guy who lives 3 houses away from where I am right now. But I think in a lot of ways it's better to look at Grant because you might as well look at somebody who's exceptional. Now, maybe the guy 3 houses away from me is exceptional, but I don't know. I talked to him a couple times. I don't think so. Okay, next paragraph. I wondered why I was so taken with Eugene O'Neill and J.D. Salinger's withdrawal from the world. She had a ready response. I don't know who she was, but I'll take it. It's fine. She had a ready response. I guess we don't need to know. That's okay. It wouldn't bother Beckett, I'll tell you that, because I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about every line. I'm just like, um, she had a ready response. Probably humility and privacy. Oh, I know who it was. It was this woman at the what did they call that place? The Porch, the literary arts. She was nice. This person actually, as far as it goes, but I mean, she was limited with how nice she could be because she was in that organization, which kind of sucked. Um, you know, that's that's where the need to belong. But I didn't let it. That was one of the last things that I did where it was even attempting to belong uh, in any group or anywhere. It was going to the porch, and but she had but the humility and privacy though. That's nice and smart, I think. Grant refused to be a self promoter. He felt such bragging was undignified. So do I. He preferred to let his work speak for itself. So do I. He wrote his memoirs out of necessity. Yeah, he did it because he didn't have money and he wanted to leave money to his wife and his family. And as the physical courage on this guy, it's like there's no comparison with him and me. I don't know. He was dying of mouth and throat cancer or something, and he fought through it in order to write this really thick book. Great book, great book. I don't know. They say it's the greatest memoir of an American president. Um, so that's why he wrote. But it's kind of like how he became a general in the Civil War, first an officer and then a general. I mean, he kind of needed a job. He had gone to West Point and he had left it. He crapped out as a farmer and was working in a clerk in one of his father's stores and was really it was just an opportunity. It was an opportunity to get like a real job. So he always kind of did what he had to do out of necessity. Now I say I face no personal crisis that motivates me to publish. Right. I don't have a personal crisis that motivates me to publish. I would be a very different person. My writing would be a lot different if I was trying to do it in order to get published so that I could make money. I mean, I that's that's not that's not my situation. I don't have to. And really, even when I was doing it, tell you the truth, when I was doing anything, on the one hand, I believed it So I wasn't lying about it. There was no mendacity in it. I believed that I was really going to do these jobs or whatever, but really I was going to do my own vision of work. I never thought of a boss or employer or anything else. So consequently, a lot of times things went south with these jobs. Although not not always. But anyway, Grant, he he was a good military artist, the arts of war. He was strong on he was strong on justice. He wanted justice for all men and women. So he was a great general, and he also happened to be a very good writer. And I haven't read the autobiography, so I don't know what he wrote in it, but I'm sure it had some sort of meaning beyond I'm I want to leave my wife some money, you know. I say I want to share my words with those that are meant to read them. Ideally, every person meant to read them. I sense that's good for me, good for them, good for God, and good for the rest of the world. I haven't even begun Cherno's book proper, and I suspect Grant did all he did with the same intent. Well, I think he did, but I'm found a year after writing those words that um, I'm not like Grant. I mean, part of Grant's story was that what appealed to me in his story was one, he took a lot of shit, unjust shit, and really had his nose put in it. Then he got a break. The Civil War was a break for him. And then he became president. And ultimately, they buried him in Grant's tomb. And I think that's what I was thinking about a year ago that would happen to me. I said, God, I'm a really good writer, and this stuff is really good, and I'm it's going to get published, and people are going to take notice of it, and I'm going to be known and all that. I'm sorry, I wouldn't have admitted that that's what I was thinking, uh, but it comes out in these words. That's what I was thinking. I don't think that way anymore. I think I'm doing what I do. Everything else will happen. My wisdom, as I mentioned on a previous tape, when I was teaching improv classes in my early 30s, and what came out of my mouth is it said, Your audience will find you. Well, the people in the class didn't even understand what I was saying because they all wanted to be on a sitcom and be found by, NBC TV or something. But I really believe that. I mean, I don't have to do anything in that regard. All I have to do is do my work the way I feel like doing it and just let it be what it is. A person larger than the inevitable fluctuations of fortune will never have fate desert him. Character truly is destiny. Sometimes I wrote like a fortune cookie, and that uh, is really in that's a line in the I Ching. It's like you know, if you're larger than fortune, fate will never desert you. That's a line in the I Ching. I can testify that it is true. I can't believe how things have worked out for me. Materially, knock on wood, even though I got to lose this weight, but my health is good. I mentioned this on several tapes, but it's worth mentioning that, everything works out. That's my experience too. including dying at the end. I mean, I haven't died myself, but I watched my parents die, and I I think it all worked out. Um, que sera, sera. I enjoy framing my life in an epic and operatic way. I was bored 2 days ago. Today, everything fascinates me. Yeah, I mean that's part of it too. The fluctuations. I don't believe this. I didn't put my light on. Okay, let's put this here. I've got other lights going, but this is the one there. So yeah, there's boredom, there's fascination, there's sadness, there's anger, uh, there's joy. I know that just sounds like what the fuck? Are we listening to this guy just ramble with a list of emotions? There's there's self-reflection, there's doubt. Uh, I fascinate myself, I say here. My interest is the opposite of narcissism. I see the universe in a mirror. Yeah, yeah. I don't think I'm talking to you just about me. I'm I'm providing you with a me that you can look at as a reflection of you, which doesn't mean that it's a reflection like that you accept everything about me, but the elements of being alive that I demonstrate are things that you could look at and then consider your own situation. Um, Grant learned how to write by meticulously composing wartime orders. I learned how to write improvising for the stage and drafting legal pleadings and briefs. I wish I was more conscious of that line when I wrote it because then I would have spent less time at the porch. I mean, what a worthless, you know, nice, but it was worth it too to learn that. And that one person was, you know, I think she was basically a nice person. Um, Grant wrote in an overstuffed chair with his legs propped on another chair. I write in a recliner. There's similar things. Grant killed himself smoking cigars. I probably stopped in time. I'll die some other way. We all have the same story, only the details vary. Grant suffered pain that would have been completely unbearable for less courageous men like me as he wrote his memoirs while he was dying. Physical pain is my biggest fear. I write now in the happiest and most comfortable chapter of my life. I don't think I need such heroism to fulfill my duty to my fate. Grant and I are the same in essence, but not in scope. I am not called upon by the gods to save a nation, maybe just myself and anyone who overhears me and says, "Oh yeah." So that's the thing on the rewrite. You take all the things about wishing for friends and people to listen, who's it meant for, and those lines are good. So you can see this process. There's the seed of the future, and there's the restriction of the past, and sometimes they both show up in the same writing. But then you say, what would you change and what would you rewrite? I don't know if I'd change or rewrite anything. Just keep reading. You're going to see changes. Um, I think that's a pretty good paragraph. I was proud that I churned out around 260,000 words of what I consider decent prose in 9 years. I still think that, still proud of it. Grant came up with 336,000 words of literary masterpiece. I'm not sure if it's a masterpiece, but of literary quality in a year while he was dying. Yes, I identify with Grant, but in many ways, I suspect that he is a dream I want to achieve. To write as if you have a year to live, to sustain and serve people you love while serving posterity in the body politic. In Grant, I see my finest ambition. But as I stated in a previous video, I'm now beyond ambition. I think I don't have to do anything but be myself. Um, that's that's how we serve the world, not with trying to gain a laurel or a certification that tells us that we serve the world. Yes, I am Grant. That's just the beginning. We have to live up to who we are. Grant was cool in crisis. Me too. I'm nervous at all other times that interrupt my solitude. That's not true. Maybe it was a year ago. I don't feel nervous all the time. Now, I don't feel the difference between making these videos or writing and just like my life. I don't feel nervous about anything anymore, really. Um, the trajectory of my bliss and my homely and ordinary daily routines. I freak out at a challenge and then usually calm down, adapt, and meet it. I still do that, but so what? It's uh, it's it's the way I am. I do lots of like quirky, weird thing. I talk to the TV. I talk to CNN. I argue with the TV. I argue with the Bears game. I'll argue with anything on the TV. I carry coins in my pocket or keep them on my desk or nightstand or something, and I throw the coins and I'll look at the I Ching while I'm trying to work something out. I don't follow the divination. I'm not divining when I read it. It's just like I'm occupying my mind just reading that thing, and sometimes it helps me pop in, and sometimes it just soothes me. And what's wrong with any of that? There's nothing wrong with any of that. Mark Twain, I said, I see Grant as a much better man than I am, but also as the same man. And I really like that line, actually. And I think it's about a lot more than me and Grant. Mark Twain was impressed by Grant's output of worthy words. I have felt a little embarrassed by my pride in being prolific, but apparently it's a thing with others who write seriously. It certainly was with Twain and Grant. I don't know. Yeah, right. I don't know if it's worth putting it in there. I resolved to write more, and I write a lot now. Well, yeah, I did do that. I resolved to write more. I spent a lot of time on those manuscripts. And then all of a sudden I stopped because I had to let the tank refill. And there was something that Norman Mailer once said, the difference between writing for a living and writing purely artistically is that like if you're writing for a living, it's kind of like forced labor. You've got to pull it out of yourself. Uh, if you're writing artistically, I mean, you just kind of wait for it to arrive. Sometimes doing this, I'll question myself and say, shouldn't you just be sitting and writing considered thoughts instead of this talking? Critics would say bloviating on these videos, and shouldn't it? No, because this is what I feel like doing right now. I'm not doing it to avoid work or to do something that's more easily accessible to me. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because it's what I want to do now. And then see what happens afterwards. The greatest task of a writer is to develop his character. Yeah. The more a person perfects himself, the better the prose. That's what I think, actually. To me, they say, take a writing class or learn how to write or whatever. You know how I learned how to write. This is what I think. The substance is the form. The substance is the form. So, and it's not, just like on a straight line, or on a line that steeps upward. I mean, it might go this way, but yeah, the writing's a reflection of who I am. So of course I look at it. It's like looking at pictures of myself. If I looked at a picture of myself when I was 35 years old, I wouldn't say, "Oh God, that's awful." Whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I wouldn't say, "Oh boy, that looks great," either. It's just like it is what it is. So yeah, working on yourself is the process of working on writing or painting or teaching or whatever it is that you do. That one comes out of the other. Um, let's see. The more a person perfects himself, the better the prose. Grant dictated a 9,000 word description of Lee's surrender at Appomattox without repeating himself or making a correction. A man in full, sharing a memory of another moment when he was alive in his fullness, resulted in literary perfection. Yeah, that's amazing, really. I mean, that I'm sure is something that I got from Chernow. I mean, yeah, that's great. I like that a lot. Okay, I'm going to stop here, um, and we'll continue um, on more of me and Grant in the next video, and whatever else comes up. All right. See you next time.